Mic. Let's make sure I've got the mic in the right place first. And get chat up for chatting. And while we're at it, let's put the stream statistics up. So where are we at? We're at here. Okay, new setup, new day. Let's dive right into it with some coffee. It is way too early in the morning for this, but let's see how we go. I'm keen to kick off and make some progress today. So we'll need you, linkages, chassis. We're not going to do the monoshock at this time. I'm going to need the sandpaper. Take you out anyway. I'll put you there, you there. All over the place. Okay, we're going to use that because you've got one or two interesting parts in there. We're going to need ball bearings. And that's the rear assembly. Is that the front? No, that is the rear assembly. Okay. So I might be missing. That's right. We'll chuck all of those parts there. More sandpaper. Looks like middle stuff. Put you there. Chuck you there because I've got nowhere better. So I'm actually using a parts, I don't know what you call it, I don't want to call it a parts bin, but something to hold all our screws and, screw tray. We'll just call it that. I've now got a screw tray for this, which makes things a bit simpler. Looks like we've got people on already. I swear you're spying on me, but that's alright. That coffee's not bad, but a bit too smooth for my liking. I much prefer it to be very, very harsh, just so you know you're alive. Okay, so where were we? We got most of the front end done yesterday, and I actually shifted where I'm recording, so now I have to turn my head 90 degrees to see the instruction. But there's a lot of friction here that needs to be dealt with, and I can't really proceed much further without dealing with that friction. But what we're going to do is get the brass knuckles on there, and we'll make sure everything fits. And then once everything fits, we're then going to go back and sandpaper everything down and get everything moving freely. These arms, for example, here, I'm covering the logo. Where is... Yeah, okay. So these arms down here, for example, they're actually not moving freely because of the compression from this front bracket. So I actually have to shave not the rods down, but the actual end points down a bit to make them flow a bit better. In fact, while I'm here, I'm just going to drop there. That gives me a bit more room. I'd be interested in seeing drone builds, actually. As I said the other day, I'm in the market for a new 3-inch drone. I'm very tempted to go larger, but I think 3 inches is just portable enough. So yeah, I'd definitely be up for that. So these linkages here, it's just the ball joint that's causing issues. So I've got a couple of tricks for that, which I'll go over. And then these, so they were flowing freely. And then I was watching a video by someone else last night who did a build. And they said that these grub screws for them were preventing it from moving freely. So let's just back that out. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So those top ones are fine. I'm going to leave the grub screws in there to retain just for looks, basically. Not for actual any practical feature. But as long as these are moving freely, I'll be happy with it. If I'm not making a sense, it's because I literally only woke up about half an hour ago and I still... I'm not a morning person anymore. 6 months ago, I definitely used to be when I was actually traveling into the office, but now that I'm at home, mornings are just not my thing. Actually, while I'm here, I can show you some of the other projects I'm working on. So this is probably an interesting one for some people, like a full Formula One car. I just received the electronics for this one, so I need to put all the electronics in here and get this up and running. I'm also going to be using the micro JST plugs rather than the full-size servo plugs. And that's mainly because I've got a proper receiver that can take the JST plugs directly. Before I was using the larger receivers and they didn't fit particularly well. And what else do I have on my desk at the moment? Well, I do have the two D Nanos that I did talk about in another session, so let me just pull those out. So that's these two, both incredibly rare cars to get, or the D Nano chassis are just incredibly hard and rare to get. So I got this one from a local seller the other day. I think it had only been up on eBay for like a couple of hours, and then there wasn't even a bidding war. I just did the buy it now price and got it immediately because the last thing I wanted to do was lose it. But the steering on this is a lot stiffer, and the motor seems to be kind of powerful. So I believe this might be an upgraded motor and upgraded a whole bunch of other stuff because this one's really, really, really quick. So can't wait to play with those a bit more. But now we're getting off topic. So how are we going to proceed? First we're going to warm up because it's a bit chilly, and let me look at the instructions. We're looking at the front knuckles at the moment. So let's kick them out of the park, knock them out of the park. As I said, too early in the morning for this stuff. But I knew I wasn't going to get back to sleep, so... And I didn't have a particularly late night, which was different and good. So that looks good. One of these is notched, one of them is not. So let's confirm that. That is indeed correct. One of them is not notched. Single pins on the bottom. Single on the top. So let's do that. Quickly double check, make sure I've got the ordering. Yes, left is notched. So I need those screws, 2 ball bearings. I don't know where these spaces are going to come from. So I saw some brass spacers the other day, and I kind of suspect those brass spacers are used for the knuckles. Except they're in the pack for the rear, so maybe not. Maybe they're just the white dot things that we saw. If I can actually find that package again. I really hope I didn't chuck that out by accident. Here you are. So we've got the bottom linkage, top linkage, and that's not secured down because it doesn't need to be. And we've always got the steering linkage, so that's all the linkage is done. So that means it is this. I do need the ball heads from here. Now, I did actually get tweezers today, so that does make things a bit simpler. So we're going to start on the left linkage. Oh, I'm also going to need ball bearings. Which ball bearings am I going to need? I'm probably going to need you guys. I'll put you guys down there. And the way to tell is you just put this shaft in there. I'm going to say that fits. And interestingly enough, it's probably a bit hard to tell on camera, but it's actually got a flattened profile. So this is the all-wheel drive wheels that'll get mounted on that, which is nice because I really don't like the rear-wheel drive tyres. Even though you get a lot more choice in terms of style, the all-wheel drive tyres are just so much nicer to work with in some ways. Like the rear-wheel drive tyres, you've got little shims and things you have to put in the tyres to lock them in place, and they're not particularly fun to work with. So I'm going to put the ball bearings in first. So the ball bearings, I'm not sure if it's going to show up on camera. Probably not. Yeah, okay. So these are shielded ball bearings, but only shielded on one side. So that other side where it's not shielded and it has the balls, you have to actually put on the inside so you don't actually accumulate any dirt or dust or whatever. I should probably oil these, but because they're only half shielded, it's quite easy to get the oil in them later. So I'm not going to bother at this point. And we're just going to go slowly as well because you don't want to damage your ball bearings. Just use this to apply some flat pressure over the entire surface. Okay, so it goes in the bottom easily enough, but not the top. So there was another streamer, BMR3, and he mentioned a whole bunch of issues. And it was kind of entertaining because it paralleled a lot of what I said on my stream yesterday. So glad to see that it's not only me complaining about some of the quality and build issues. I did say yesterday I was going to polish everything up, but I decided that was going to be too much hassle, and I wanted to get as far on the front end as possible just to see how it all goes together and then focus on polishing. I was actually going to do a lot of the fitment stuff overnight, but I was just not in the mood and ended up just streaming some video games overnight. But we'll be doing that on stream today now that I've got a better idea of what needs to be done, and I've got a bit more time up my sleeve today. It's currently 9:30 in the morning, so whereas yesterday it was like 2 in the afternoon when I started streaming, so like night and day difference in terms of that. And once again, this is probably it's not going to be the most interesting stream in the world, so feel free to just hang around and ask questions. Oh, there we go. Let's try that. So, like, a good tip, the only thing I really like about these mini Z screwdrivers is that you can put the standard bearings on there like that and hold them, and then use this to ream them in. Very, very handy trick, that. One I've had to use more than once. Oh, God. This is really, really tight. What about on you? Don't tell me the brass parts are off by bad diameters as well. That's annoying because I don't have a lot of options to fix that. But I do today, however, have my diamond file, so let's try that out a bit. I'm just going to take off a bit of brass to see if I can get it fitting in. There we go. Just a bit at a time. It's better, but still not good. It's not a great way to start the stream, that one. There we go. Now we're making some progress. The reason I grabbed the diamond file, I was actually looking for them yesterday. So I've got 2 sets of files. One that's just like a metal file, and then a cheapish diamond coated one, which is actually quite effective. I don't know what the longevity is going to be like, but in terms of just raw cutting ability, the diamond ones are noticeably different and significantly better. I mean, you can probably hear it cutting on stream. So if I go... You just don't hear that noise when you're using the steel one. Okay, so this is... I can feel the bearing wants to go in. It definitely seems like the bottom is the issue here. don't want to take away too much because this is a performance sensitive part. I don't want the bearing moving around at all. Almost there. A couple more rounds and we should be good. Let's try that. I don't mind a tight fit, but a loose fit is really what I want to avoid. Okay, well, it's getting in slowly. You also don't want to put too much pressure on the bearing laterally. These bearings are not designed for lateral loads, so you can end up destroying them if you do that. Okay, so that's in, and that's really, really tight, which is how I want it. The worst part about working on Mini Zs, especially on stream, especially with polishing and rods and everything like that, is there's so much. It's so easy to say something that could be a joke, but I'm really trying to keep this as a fairly clean stream. That, of course, doesn't apply to anyone chatting, but I will say some very, very silly things while I'm on stream. Oh yeah, that coffee needs to be hot, piping hot. I'll have to remember that for next time. So I actually just swapped brands of coffee. It was kind of funny. I had a favorite brand from my local supermarket. It was just a supermarket's brand. And it was good, but then it started to get very, very acidic and not taste very nice. And then COVID-19 hit. So I haven't been able to go out and try a couple of coffee places and find another brand I like. But the coffee store up the road, which I've started going to again. So I've actually got probably about 500 meters up the road. I've got like 4 or 5 different coffee places I can go to. Which is just one of the things about Sydney, like that there is literally a coffee place like in the city every 20 meters. So if you don't like one coffee place, you just move on to the other. And you would think with all that competition, coffee prices would be cheap, but they're not. So a good cappuccino, for example, you're looking at probably about anywhere for a large one from $3.50 to $5.50, depending on the place. So you can save a lot of money by moving around and just going to different shops and whatnot. There's a couple of really, really good places I go to, but anyway, I'm getting off topic. So I went up to the coffee place up the road, and it hadn't really occurred to me that they sell their beans. And I did notice that the coffee there it was smooth, which I mentioned this blend was very, very smooth, which I don't normally like. I like that harsh, noticeable taste. But compared to everything else I've been able to buy from like the supermarket and online and everything, it's been too harsh, or just not even harsh, but acidic and with a really bad aftertaste. So I just decided to go with this blend, and it's not too bad. It might be better with some milk in it. I've just got it, having it black at the moment, but yeah, I definitely didn't think I was a coffee connoisseur at all, but I guess I just know what I like. And try and ream that in. Oh, it's getting close. So that stayed in without too much effort, so we're nearly there. So when you actually ream the bearing in, you can sometimes feel which side it's binding on. And if you can't, you can move the handle around a bit to see if you can locate that. And once you've found an area where it's catching and not going in, you can just start working that area in particularly, because it might be that the hole is not perfectly circular. Or actually, more accurately, it's more likely that the hole is not the same shape as the bearing, because the bearing may not be perfectly circular either. It should be, but you know, physics, real life, disappointment. Okay. So if we can get up to building the rear wheel drive assembly today, I'll be happy with that. We're definitely not going to get onto electronics today. I do have all the electronics I need here, which is good. But I'd actually be very tempted to go off and finish the Formula 1 electronics before that. But we'll see. I really want to get this up and running. There's a lot of people who just received their DRZ V2s at the moment. And so, especially in terms of YouTube views, I kind of want to get in on that train of... Okay, that still needs some work. I kind of want to take advantage of that. Although I noticed my video I uploaded yesterday hasn't got many views, and I'm guessing that's just due to the length. Although it's one of the more comprehensive DRZ build videos online at the moment. Damn you, BMR3, stealing all my views. You know who you are. No, I'm not kidding. It doesn't really bother me too much. At the end of the day, sometimes I do, like, my original goal was just to make sure that there's information out there. And I've got a couple of initiatives on, like, doing that for Mini-Z information in general. And sometimes, though, I do have to remind myself that I'm not trying to win here. I'm just trying to help people out. It's a bit harder when new stuff comes out. It's like I want to try and take advantage of that and build my channel up a bit. But in all honesty, a lot of other people are doing a lot better than myself. So they're making much better videos. So there's really no point to try and grow my channel when other people are doing a better job. Okay. This does not want to go in. Maybe I'll have to force it a bit more. It's going in part of the way, but at the bottom there's something binding and preventing just going in. So let's take a closer look. One of the useful things, I'm actually wearing glasses at the moment because if I work on small parts too much, it causes my eyes to bug out quite badly. And I do it like whenever I'm using a computer, I wear glasses now. And I've heard that advice a couple of times. Like I remember hearing some advice from an optician that even if you don't need glasses, it's likely of benefit to be wearing reading glasses on a PC, just so you're not straining your eyes as badly. I kind of wish I had have done that earlier, because it makes a huge difference for me these days. Especially with the way everything is with my eyes. Yeah, that does not want to go in. I mean, the other thing it could be, and let's quickly check this. So I'm going to show people how to use one of these. There's a couple of features not everyone knows about. So if you have a look on the end here, there's actually a depth gauge. So we can use it. What we can do is we can stick it out like that, put it in, and then bring that down. And that tells me that's approximately 1.5 what millimeters? Really? And how wide is it bearing? Okay, so this bearing is shallower than the depth. So if I'm not going in, it's because there is something binding. So simple tricks like that can tell you if it is just a manufacturing defect or if you're trying to do something that's actually impossible. In this case, we know that there's something, like that tells us that there is actually something binding at the bottom and preventing the bearing going to its full depth. You know, it's kind of funny with a lot of the videos online. So you see, oh, I just built my Mini-Z or something, like my Atomic or my GL Racing, and it only took me X hours, and it's very hard to get on. It's very hard to demonstrate how long that actually is. So if you're watching the stream and you get 2 hours in and you start to get bored, you start to realize just how labor intensive these things are, and just how painful they can be to build. And I guess that's why they can be so satisfying when you're done. But yeah, if you're just watching a 5-minute video of someone who's completed it, it doesn't really articulate how much time and effort, sweat and tears are put into it. But for anyone who's watching this as the second video and has gotten to this point, I'm definitely going to congratulate you, because that's a lot more effort than most people are going into. So just for some insight onto the video, as of for 24 hours after it was published, the first build video has got about 16 views. The average view time is about just over 10 minutes. It was about 18 minutes and it's now dropped to about 10, which is still really high for a YouTube video. Like, both those numbers are incredibly high, but it's a 2-hour long video. So there we go. And now it goes in, it's perfectly flat. So yep, just go slowly with the file, and that's all that's required. So yeah, back to video. Yeah, so I was hoping for more than 16 views, but to be honest, I think it'll just build up over time. BMR, I'm going to be mentioning him a lot. I think his videos at like 200 views now, and it's only about 20 or 30 minutes, but it's really, really condensed. It was really, really nice to watch. I still find 20 minutes a bit too long to watch for a video. Like, I know DRZ does 20 or 30 minute long videos, and it's the type of thing that I actually have to plan out when to watch those videos. And they've got a bit too much information for me to watch in the background. Like, I definitely think I'd appreciate if they're only 5 to 10 minutes and then broken up over, like, split up into more videos. So where are we at? We need to look in the instructions. We need to install ball heads and an M4 flat screw. So I'm going to assume this is the M1.4. And this will be interesting and telling, because I've got a feeling that BMI used an incorrect screw somewhere. So that's about 2 mil wide. So I'm going to take that as a 1.4. It's a flat head. So how deep are you? You are... Looks like you might actually be too long. 7 point... So I don't... It might be that screw, but I don't think it is. Although it was in there with the rest of them, so... This is where I'm torn. This is where the atomic instructions are effectively worthless. Let's quickly take a look at how that's used, and then make a decision based off that. Okay, so they're recessed, and it goes all the way down. So I'm going to use these. And let's just... Oh man. Let's see if the thread matches. Let's do my usual trick of using my fingers to hold the screw in. I need to work out how to better place the camera as well. So I upgraded my web camera to something that's 60 frames per second and 4K capable. Now that may seem a bit silly for a webcam, but I've been using it for capturing track information, for my runs on the racetrack behind me. And for that, 60 frames per second makes a difference, but the nice thing about this is this camera is very, very configurable in terms of autofocus and gain and all of that. In fact, like, I did do a video on all of that sort of stuff, and that's where it really shines. I wasn't expecting those features. I was kind of lucky I got them, but the 60 frames per second, that was primarily what I was looking for. And there aren't a lot that could actually do 1080p at 60 frames per second, but for high-speed stuff, it really, really is good. And in fact, given that it is during the day, and I've typically been capturing at night, I might get some track footage later on at about midday when the light should be at its peak, and just see what that does in terms of noise and what settings I can use, and see if I can get rid of some more of that blur. Okay, so that's going in nicely. Now I also have some Loctite here. I'm going to be pulling everything apart And for the metal on metal stuff, I'll be Loctiting a lot of it. So, and I've used Loctite enough now and got enough of it on my hands to know that Loctite has a very, very sweet taste. Can't really work out if that's a good or a bad thing that I know that. It's probably not a good thing, but I don't know if it's necessarily like a you are going to die thing either. Okay, so we insert that on the end there. Put that back in. So you'll also note I'm using an RC Mart track mat at the moment. Turns out it makes a lot of these operations a lot nicer. Like spotting these white things on an orange surface is really, really good. Surfaces I'd typically avoid are black or white, just because parts with RC cars are typically dyed black or white. And any other color makes it just so much easier to locate parts and spot defects, and more importantly, present on camera. Like that's a very orange that you're seeing in front of you, but I can assure you it's a bit more dull in real life. The colors on this camera are slightly saturated by default, and before this stream, I did not go off and tune the colors at all. I didn't really feel much need to. Okay, so you're going in fine. I don't want to over torque those either. It's very, very easy to, especially with parts this small, strip threads. So just finger tight at the moment. If I do find something's too loose, I'll Loctite it in rather than using pressure to keep it locked in. That one goes on here. If you damage one of these parts, I can assure you it's going to be expensive, because not only do you have to pay shipping from Miracle Mart, you also have to pay for the part, and it's not like they're only a couple of dollars. They're normally like $20 a pop. And then you've also got to wait for Miracle Mart to stock it and ship it, and they're not the best at that. And I have had up to 3-month delays with them on those parts before. I will trash their name constantly because I've had so many issues with them, and their customer service is some of the... Actually, I was going to say their customer service is the most appalling company I've ever dealt with, and there's only one worse. So I actually ordered from Eagle Racing the other day, and wow, not only is their website horrible, but I got an email from them saying, oh, we're going to refund your shipping, and I thought that was weird, and then I read down a bit further, it's like, oh, you'll have to organize your own courier company, and it's like... So not only is your website difficult to use, like incredibly difficult to use and slow, and it's hard to get across just how bad their website is. Like even back in the 1990s, their website would have been considered appalling. It's that bad. And if you open multiple tabs and then click buy, it ends up adding a completely different and random item to your cart. So I went through the store, opened everything up in tabs, and then decided what I wanted to buy, and then I ended up with 36 items of the same thing. Yeah. That was really, really bad. But yeah, now they're expecting me to organize my own shipping. That was kind of... I haven't replied to them, but I'm very tempted to go back to them and say, hey, look, you know what? That massive order I was going to place with you, just let's forget about that. I don't want it anymore. Which is a real shame, because I wanted to order some more parts for the counter steering kit that I'm building for the MA030. And you don't need their parts, but their parts definitely make it a lot simpler to work with and build. But what I really wanted was the MA020 VE Pro shocks, which I still consider to be some of the best shocks you can get for Mini Zs. Not in terms of performance, but for just like tuning and tweaking and working out offsets. They're just phenomenal. Some of their parts are great, some of them are horrible. So like their diffs, especially their rear solid axle and their front one-way, absolutely exceptional. Their shocks, absolutely exceptional. Their rear diff housing, really, really horrible. Their front suspension setup, also incredibly horrible, and major, major defects on the design. So... Okay, So the front shocks are built. Now that I have everything to store the parts, that goes in there. We're going to fit the front, I can't even remember what they're called. We're going to fit the front army things, is what I'm going to call them. And just basically do a test fit. And once I'm happy with the test fit, we're going to pull it all apart again. And then really get everything dialed in. So the way I normally do this, in fact, I forgot to do the bits at the bottom, so let's jump on that first. No. I've got a part that's magnetized here, and I can't remember which part that is, so we're just going to use pliers to get what I want. In fact, you know what? I've actually got these. I'll keep them there so I don't forget. So these are just some Tamiya high quality pliers, tweezers, sorry. And I already put some force on the end and ruined the end slightly, but I just fixed that up by cutting off the end with carbide cutters once again. I really like how precise these are. Actually, speaking of really awesome tools, so I've got one of their scalpels as well, but I mean, scalpels are scalpels. You don't need to spend money on it. I don't mind because I kind of like a particular type of fit and finish on it. But this is a Tamiya handsaw. So that's actually a separated like saw blade on the end. This is so good for like fabricating custom parts out of plastic, or like anywhere where you'd use like a jeweler's saw or something, but you might not necessarily have access on both sides. This is great. In fact, I use this instead of a jeweler's saw on basically everything. Between that and the diamond file, it's been pretty crazy how many parts I've been able to custom fabricate. So the other day I was shaving down a pinion to make it fit from the MA020 and fit it on the MA030. And I just filed it down with a file. And then I had to do a whole lot of additional work to get everything just fitting together nicely. But I was actually looking for that saw blade because I could have cut the plastic and just created more access rather than shaving the part down. But I think in the end, shaving the part down was the right move because it was one of those parts that needs pretty good alignment. And if I had have just created more access, the parts would not have been aligned properly. But my MA30 or MA030 is starting to look very, very custom now. I've got a lot of modified 020 parts on it. Most of the stuff just bolts on. One or two parts just need like 1 mil adjustment. Cool, that arm is now done. Yeah, so most of the parts just, I still don't know what that bottom arm is for. Just require some minor fitment changes. But I'm very, very happy with just how custom it is now. It's a bit of a unique vehicle in itself because of that. So let's jump you on. I'm probably not doing a good example of, I might actually drop that. Do you want to remove track cam? No, I want to remove that. There we go. Let's just free up a bit more space. So as normally happens, and has been happening a lot to me lately, I've forgotten my train of thought. But I was told to expect that that might actually happen, so that's not much of a problem. As I mentioned yesterday, I've had a double lung transplant, and some of the medication has pretty extreme effects. There we go. So if I move the arm, that's looking good, but there's a lot of resistance there. And in fact, if I move it a bit, that fixes some of it. I know my servo can overcome that in terms of the left to right steering motion. It shouldn't have to, so that's why we're going to tweak it all up. But more importantly, I'm concerned about the the steering knuckles, that's a term, steering knuckles, are moving up and down freely. Because while the servo can overcome that, it has a huge effect on the springs you use. And you want everything to return naturally without the springs. And let's twist you up. I'm also not going to worry too, like I tweaked everything to the recommended lengths. I'm actually not going to bother too much maintaining that going forward. I think I'm just going to eyeball it. And then I do have a caster camber and droop tools. So I will be able to dial that in manually. So that's weird. I think that part at the top is just badly... Oh, you know what? That's got to rotate. So I did mention yesterday that these parts have a shiny side and a non-shiny side. And you want to be inserting into the shiny side because otherwise it just does not pop in properly. So one side is slightly wider than the other, and the shiny side designates which one is slightly more open. Let's twist you a bit. One of the reasons why I'm doing a test fit is I had issues with the DRZ. Where did it go? Here, there. Specifically with this right steering knuckle, where the steering knuckle would pop up under extreme load. So I just wanted to see how everything works together. Okay, so that's interesting I thought it would have more steering angle. Actually, I thought it would have extreme steering angle. I thought that was one of the advantages of this build, but it doesn't look... Oh, actually, yeah, it does. Okay, so I've got some clearance issues. So, whoops, steering arm popped out. So there we go, you can see that. That's not the full angle, but it just shows that it's all working, which is nice. Okay. Now time for the step I didn't want to do, which is pull this all apart and redo it. Just visually inspecting it from the top, moving everything to center. There is a bit of calibration work I'll have to do here, but it's pretty dialed in by the looks of it. So I don't think we'll have to do too much work in terms of... So if that's in the center, like those are forward and roughly equal. So that means I've got most of these arms somewhat right, but we're still going to need to tweak a bit more. Now, what's the best way to get these off? I need the tool I've got in my D-Nano kit. So people might remember this as a spur gear remover. If you just pop it underneath the ball head, it should pop them off really, really easily as well. I recommend using a tool. I normally don't, but I'm very, very silly for not doing that. It's very easy to damage the plastic on these, so you might as well just use a tool and do it properly. Or depending on your point of view, I'm a tool, and therefore I'm doing it correctly. And come on. Can't really get good leverage on that one, so what are we going to do? We're going to twist you out to the side. Pop you like that. There we go. And I'm just going to rotate it out on that last spot. Pop. And then we bring it down to open it up a bit. Pop it off like that, and I don't really want to twist you because I'm feeling pressure. But I don't think there's enough space to... Okay, we're just going to rotate you out. There we go. So the arms are definitely starting to move a bit freer now that they've had a bit of movement in. Let's take this top part off. No, I'm going going to need a hex part. And do that. So I'm going to leave the screws embedded in there. It's one of the ways I remember how everything goes back together. So I'm not going to touch you, but I do need to work on the ball bearings here because that's part of the problem with fitment. I do need to remove the front two and only the front two. So you are standard Phillips head. And good, I didn't put them in too tight. So yeah, I think if I was approaching this, I'd do all the front suspension all in one go, just as a test fit, and then go back and remove the parts and work on them individually. There's a bunch of reasons why you want to do that, but so one of the reasons is if you're doing this blind without instructions, which is how I did the DRZ one, just allows you to identify issues rather than trying to fix individual problems, which may cause other additional issues. So yeah, so that arm has got a bit of friction on it, but you can see that now that this arm is now freely flowing. And that's because it's just too much force that's pinching these joints together from this part on the front. And if I back it off a bit, you can see it works nicely. So we're going to start there, funnily enough. That's the part I wanted to tackle. So originally I polished one of these, I don't know what you call it, these pins, because it wasn't rotating freely. So I now know both of those pins are fine. It's just literally these endpoints that need to be filed back. And they're now embedded in there, which is going to make removing them really, really, really painful. So I'm going to have to work out how I do that. Actually, maybe I just won't. Maybe I'll just file them in place. So let's have a look. Let's move you out of the way first. Okay. Working out how to get your file flat is definitely a skill worth learning. I'm still not very good at it, but I'm good enough for most of the work I do. And what you can do is you can actually do it in a way that's off, and then once you've got one side up to the level you want, go back and work on the other side. Okay, tissue. Oh man, constantly having a cold for your entire life is really, really annoying. Okay, let's do that. Let's put that back in. I've got a feeling this is going to be enough. I don't want to take too much off because I don't want the arms moving back and forward. And even like you'd think half a mil would be all right, but that can be pretty drastic, especially if it's moving not back and forward like that, but angling like that. That 1 mil or half a mil can translate to quite a significant amount of movement. But luckily, each pass of a file takes off a predefined amount of material, and sometimes that's actually listed on the file itself. And so by careful selection of the file and knowing how many cuts of the file you make, or how many cuts you make with the file, so how many times you go off the surface, you can work out how much material you're removing at a time. That's the best way to do this one. There we go. Push it in with the arms. Push you in with the arms as well. Come on, are you in? Yes, you're in. Smooth, smooth. Now, if we screw in, we can see if that part is good or not. And we actually have to screw in both sides. You can't assume that, and you've got to screw it all the way in. The reason you've got to screw it all the way in is because the head of the screw is tapered, and so it centers the part. But if you only screw in one side, you can have some twist in it. So you might only be verifying one side, or you might be seeing binding on one side when there is actually no binding when you've got both in, and then you end up over removing too much material. Okay. This is looking pretty awesome. It didn't take much by the looks of it. So let's have a look. That's great. Back and forward motion. There is probably about 0.5 mm movement there. But there is on both sides. So I'm going to call that a win. And I'm going to say that's done. Which is good because I suspected that was going to take quite a bit of time to do. So the next one is all these eyelets, retaining things. There's, I don't know how I want to go about that. I think first we want to clean them up. And the problem most of them are fairly clean. But before I do that, there's one part I want to address. So metal on metal doesn't retain very well. And if I can show it here, those, see that silver part and the part it's mating into? Those are both metal, and they're very, very loose at the moment. While the steering setup will hold it in place, there's no reason why. I want to be able to torque and twist and untwist that endpoint, and so we're just going to put some Loctite on it, just to make sure it stays in there with very, very little effort. In fact, let's grab, when using Loctite, always use a paper towel, and just have a drip on the end. Pull some of that back. And then we're just going to reinsert. And in fact, I think I've still got some coffee left that's almost room temperature now. So let's have some of that in a sec. Come on. Twist, twist, twist. So the reason I want the Loctite is if I'm backing off this little eyelet thing, it's got the potential to untwist the arm as well. And it's not the end of the world, but it's just annoying. Oh, that's room temperature, but to be honest, it isn't too bad. That actually might be good as a cold brew. What was I doing? I now have to do the other arm. So anywhere we've got metal on metal, I'm just going to Loctite it in where it makes sense to do so. And that should just make our life easy at the adjustment stage. You've got to be very, very careful with Loctite, especially around ball bearings. It's if you're Loctited at a bearing, that could be catastrophic. Okay, and I'm also just making sure that the polished side is up for both of those arms, and it is, so happy with that. These screws are metal on, that black part is metal, and they feed into this part. I'm not going to Loctite them, just because there's no twist, there's no forces acting upon those screws, they're purely retention. And if I do find an issue with them later, I've got ways of dealing with it then. So we can deal with this part next. So let's back that off. There we go. So I was watching a YouTube channel yesterday about a fairly famous or popular RC YouTuber getting into Mini Zs. And he just bought the Mini Z tools and he was kind of excited about them. And I must admit, when I bought them as well, I was kind of excited. The problem with the Mini Z tools, is the hex bits get rounded very, very easily. So you can see this is Mini Z. There we go. However, you'll actually notice I've got some very, very generic ones that look very, very similar. These generic ones are actually built to a higher quality spec and fit better in the ball bearing stuff than these ones. The hex part for the Mini Z stuff, like over time, just get really badly damaged. So you'll actually see the end on this one is slightly different. It's actually notched. I definitely prefer these. They've been a lot better. So it's annoying because the Mini Z ones are so expensive and you think you'd get quality from that, but they're the worst I've ever seen, and the cheap ones are actually significantly better. So yeah. Like it'd be nice if you got what you paid for, but it looks like that's not the case. So we pop out that little collar. Now here's a really good pro tip, and this is why I like the Tamiya tweezers, because they've got that really fine tip. You can actually get in the middle of bearings to where there's that gap, and just push down slightly to push a bearing out. Because if you've got two bearings back to back, sometimes it can be very, very difficult to pop the bearings back out. So this just allows you to get into that small crack, apply a bit of pressure, pop out the bottom bearing like that. Then, actually, can I do it with, yeah. So remember how I talked about the Mini Z one having that recess? The other tools have that recess as well, and I use that typically to pop out the bearings. Oh, actually, the Mini Z, I think the only reason I keep the Mini Z one around is to pop out bearings, because it's just the right distance. Oh, that's a tight fit. Oh, there we go. That's a very, very tight fit. So I do need to get the bearings down a bit further. There was a comment from BMR, sorry, about not getting the bearing all the way down, and it hadn't occurred to me that there might be a defect on the inside of this part that needs to be fixed. But I did know the bearings did protrude a bit, so I want to try and clean that up. I think he used sandpaper, which I'd hate to think of how difficult that would have been for him. Using a file like this is definitely an easier method. Cool. Let's push you in, do a test fit. Only ever do one side at a time, so you don't have the buried bearing problem that I mentioned earlier. And twist that out. So I'm focusing on the bottom bearing because I had the top actually hitting, the top screws hitting other parts. So by working the bottom bearing, I can get the total height down. Turns out it doesn't really matter much with the top bearing because there's nothing, it's not going to interfere with anything. So we only really need to work on the bottom bearing, which should save us a lot of time here. It's still too high for my liking. And I do want that, I'm going to call it 1/2 mil. It's actually amazing to, like, once you've practiced with this stuff a bit, and I definitely appreciate machinists for this sort of thing. Actually, let me close up that Loctite before I knock it over. It's amazing how you can actually see different tolerances. Like, I never thought I'd be able to see, like, 100 micrometers, for example. 100 micrometers? Is it 10 micrometers? Maybe it's 10 micrometers, but with particular lights and particular techniques, you can actually see it, and more importantly, you can feel the difference in machining finishes between like a rough finish at very high resolutions like that. So it's definitely been eye-opening because I've been looking into machining a lot more. So for those who don't know and haven't guessed by the Blitzworks username, I'm actually trying to get into fabricating Mini Zs from scratch, like custom built parts and 3D printing custom chassis and that sort of thing. Sort of like SDR racing or SD racing on YouTube. And so building these kits is definitely a step to that, but learning engineering and how things go together is definitely another way. So how am I going to get that further in? That's not going to fit. That's not going to fit, so I can't ream it that way. I could use a reamer. Let's give that a quick go. So if that's just a some extra spur that needs to be removed. This might fix it. It'll widen the hole a bit, but it doesn't matter that the hole in the center is widened because the bearings, it's resting on the bearings, not that center hole. So that's worth a risk, although I've got a feeling it's just I need to drill further into that, so... that's getting there. I'm just going to quickly check. Four of those bearings. They are thinner though, that's the problem. Well, I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter because I've got these bearings, so if I need to, I'll just use those, and I'm just going to put thinner bearings in rather than trying to get these ones to fit. In fact, let's quickly just refer back to the manual. I want to see what thickness they should be. So they should be 2 mil thick. Zero that off. And they're 2.1. And as I said, like, I suspect they're all 0.1 larger than, or sticking over the edge, so they're 1.6. That's annoying. Okay. So I do have more tools, and these hand screwdrivers are really good for this sort of work. Mainly taking material off the end. I don't have anything that's the same width as this hole, but I might also just quickly check one thing. They're both the same height, aren't they? Yeah. So that goes back to that machining thing. I put them close together and I could tell that they were probably within 0.5 of each other. That's 0.5 mil, which is kind of insane that we can actually see down to that. Let's do a test fitment of one of these. Actually, even that looks like it's not doing too well. But we care more about the bottom than the top, so let's try that. Yeah, that's a perfect fit on the bottom. Let's cheat in that case. I'm not going to use that bearing. I'm going to use, because this is a steering bearing, it doesn't matter if it's not the best bearing, and those bearings seem relatively good. So I'm just going to take something from my collection instead. Yep, that'll do. Yep, that's the same bearing. Perfect. And we'll put one of those ones back in there. Looks good. It's got a tapered end, that's interesting. Let's put the collar back on. It's weird that they put a collar on there, but I guess it just has to do with the... Oh, you know why? It's because the screw is threaded. Yeah, it would be because the screw is threaded. You don't want to damage the inside of the bearings, and you probably want to get a good mating surface. Let's do you. I'll try and do stuff in view. I've actually got to keep the camera at very, very specific angles because, like, the house is very, very messy and I don't like showing that off, so... Yeah, I'd say that's good enough. Try a bit more of a turn. No, let's back it off. So that's probably, I backed off by about 1/16, and that makes a markable difference to how smooth that is. My screws are good. Let's do a test fit with this part here, because I was having clearance issues before. So let's just see if this solved that. I'm not going to screw it in. What I'm just going to do is rest against the surface and then run it underneath and get a rough idea of how close it is now. Okay, no, actually, that's difficult. Let's just screw it back in. And then we'll clean up all these bearings after I'm done. So, so how's your day? Yep. Okay, I mean, for those watching on YouTube, you probably don't realize there's actually not many people in the room at the moment, and I'm basically talking to myself. So, but if you're having a good day, let us know in the comments. No, only joking. I really hate that on YouTube, like that. Please like and subscribe and like leave comments. I don't think the adding comments actually adds anything other than like makes them look good in YouTube. But the like and subscribe thing really burns me. I hate that. I hate that a lot. Okay, so let's push the arm back up against the body so I can rotate underneath. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that, but okay, let's do it on top of the orange. You can see air through there now, and it's not binding, so I just had to use a thinner bearing. So I know BMR solved this by, it's still a bit close for my liking, I think. Oh no, plenty of room. BMR solved this by like filing everything back and everything. I think the actual solution here is just use a different bearing, because trying to file that out and get that working, unless you've got really, really good and specialist tools, is going to be very, very painful and difficult. So let's clean up these bearings. Now we're going to work on all the little eyelets for everything that's holding the ball ends. And then with that, when that's done, we should have a very, very good front end setup. So let's take one of these ball ends. Now there's a couple of ways to do this, and I'm very, very tempted to do the Dremel way, but I just want to check. Just want to check my electric screwdriver and see if it's got the speed to do it. It might actually, but I've got no way to clamp it in there, so I'm not going to be able to do that. There is another method which I'm actually quite interested in trying, where we just stretch it out. BMR mentioned he did this. It's not typically how I do it. I like to put the Dremel in there, like attach this to a Dremel, and then spin it really, really fast, and just like sort of melt through friction, and get rid of all the defects that way. But this is a bit small to be able to do that, and it's very easy to actually melt the ball ends while doing that. Okay, those two screws. So we're just going to stretch it out slightly with just a bit of pressure and see what that does. I don't know if I like this method, but let's see if it just takes a bit of extra time. If it just takes a bit of extra time, that actually works in our favor, because that means we can get quite a high degree of accuracy. No. Try it a bit more. No. Not working at all. Let's just try getting some movement in it. Doesn't seem to work well either. So there is another method as well. I do have the tools for it. Oh, and in fact I just dropped that, didn't I? And I really hope we're not going to be using this ball end for anything else. And in fact, there's two of them, so we likely are. So I can't do that method, but the method I'm thinking about is you actually lightly score the head there, and that just makes it a bit simpler. So we're going to try another technique. We're going to find something that's a bit oversized and just push that in. And I'm just going to torque this through leverage and widen it up a bit. This is going to be a bit of work to get. Oh, actually, you know what? Rather than doing that, I might just use one of the arms and the fix balls on there. So that seems to be doing a bit better. Do I have anything that's tapered though? Yes, I do. I have a soldering iron. So I can just force the head, and that should stretch it out evenly in all directions. And in fact, I'll use this part over the top to give myself more leverage. Okay, that does feel a bit looser. Maybe this is a winner. Let's try that again. Oops. This has a convenient hole in the end there, so I can poke through that and get even coverage around the entire piece of plastic. And more specifically, something bigger to push on. Okay, and I did feel the plastic give a bit, which is good, and then go back to its original shape. So, still not there. Let's try it from the other side. So, I mean, the bottom is going to be wide enough anyway. It might actually make sense to go in from the top. Because if you make the bottom too wide, it's just going to, the pin or the ball is just going to fall out. So, okay. So you probably want to do this on, push down on the shiny side. That does feel smooth. Yeah, in fact, that'll stay in. But that also came out very, very easy. I'm just going to try the other side now and see what that's like. That clicks in and stays in. Okay. So I've actually probably made the bottom a bit too big, but we can just clamp that back together. And hopefully that fixes that issue. It does. Okay, cool. So we now push down on the shiny side. Cool. Oh, we're getting there. So we've got a lot of these. We're looking at about 12. So if you're watching, you may want to go grab a drink. We're going to be here a while. So if I was editing this video, and I probably should, there we go. And it's retained very well. Actually, I just want to test it again. So if I was editing this video, I wouldn't be talking during this part, just so I could cut it out. And then I would just fast forward through it. But I'm not. I'm just doing raw uploads because I really don't have the time to do that. Do I want it any looser than that? I think I do. I'm just trying to make sure it's retained very well as well. So I am actually going to shut up for a bit. Oh man, that's almost perfect. I kind of wish I knew this trick when I was working on the DRZ, like the V1. This is just working so much quicker than every other technique I had. But more interestingly, I've got a lot of precision on how I do this. So that means I have less risk of overdoing it. I can be as fine-grained on this as I want. There we go. Oh, perfect. Actually, so there's only 8 more of these now that I think about it. I've got my math wrong. Now, I did talk about Loctiting parts. I could Loctite these, even though they're plastic, but I'm actually pretty confident with how well they're held in. I may revisit that later because it's plastic on plastic on both, so plastic on metal on both sides. And for lack of a better term, these both have the same grip coefficient. So if I unwind this, it's as likely to do this side or untwist that side as it is that side. And I want this side to be less untwisted. Like I want this side to be retained and this one to go in and out. But I'll deal with that when I go into the tuning stage. Oh, whoops. Sorry, hiccups all of a sudden. I'm going to blame the coffee. So that's an up-down. Observe which side is polished and which side is not. Push that on. Do a test fit. It's not falling down, needs to go out wider. I'm not afraid to twist these ones out while they're still too tight. That is going to cause them to be a bit looser. But at the end of the day, the reason we're taking them off is to make them looser anyway, so we might as well just take advantage of that fact. What are you? Oh, you're my test. Let's put you in there so I don't accidentally knock you off the table like I did last time. So that arm's getting there, I can definitely feel it. I'll get the helicopters out. I wonder if that's one of those military helicopters. There's been a lot of them lately. And I don't live in the US, so it's not like riot-related helicopters. It's just I've got a military base nearby and they like to do training of like emergency takeoffs and stuff like that. In fact, I'm going to push down so I don't hurt my fingers anymore. Because I'm starting to lose feeling in my fingers because I am putting too much pressure on them. This one's definitely taking a bit more to work it out. Yeah, actually, let's do it this way. Oh, man. Well, that's looking good. Whoops. I think I made this one too loose. There isn't any resistance there, but not really. Oh, maybe if I do. Kind of want it to fall down under its own weight, so we're going to do another one of these, and then I'm going to have to tighten it up as well so it doesn't fall out as easily. There we go. Although I think we're almost there, so that's good. It's still not falling under its own weight. It also seems to be dependent on which pin we attach it to, so let's try the other side in case I've just been doing the wrong one. Nope, I did do the right one. Okay. once again. Maybe I need a tool or a jig to do this. I could quite easily build one, I think. Like with a screw on top or something, so I can get really, really precise with how much force I apply. Yeah, still quite a bit of resistance there. Let's take a look at the insides. So there is one other trick I can do. So the edges aren't particularly clean. Let's ream them, although this is a very, very dangerous operation. So not only for my fingers, but it's very easy to screw this up. So I'm just trying to take any sharp edges off in there that may be causing friction. There we go. Trick is, as always, not to overdo it. I can definitely feel some friction in there still, so maybe I do want to get the Dremel out. The biggest problem is I can't actually remember where I left the Dremel. Oh, just found it. Literally sitting at my feet, so... One Dremel. The big thing is going to be getting a collet that's right to hold these pins. I don't think I've got one small enough. I stand corrected. Cool. So the nice thing about doing it this way is it's very, very quick. The bad thing about doing it this way is it's very, very quick. And it's very, very easy to, I guess, blow it all out and screw up the part. So not recommended for beginners. Actually, maybe it's going to be easy with the collet off. Do that. Pliers are very, very handy things to have close by. There we go. So that's in like that. You can see the ball end on the end there. We're going to have to be very, very careful not to go too fast. And in fact, if your Dremel is almost out of power, that's probably a good thing. Now it would be very, very tempting to just do this like flat or perpendicular. It's hard to draw on camera like that. But you actually have to tilt it up and down because the suspension will travel as well. And it looks like this is not protruding as much as I'd like it as well, so this is going to be a bit dicey. Well, let's turn it on. Unfortunately, I've got almost a full charge by the sounds of it. Let's try that. Okay, not making as much progress as I wanted. Let's try that again. Can definitely feel it getting warm, and that's the thing you have to be careful about. Oh, actually, that one does need a clean up. So I actually don't care about the external appearance. I only really care about the internal appearance, and as long as that's smooth, I'm happy. Actually, that's coming off too easily now, so we're going to clamp this one. And just make it a bit smaller. Oh, that's really ultra high friction. And it's going all the way through, which is even worse. Oh no, if I back it out a bit, that's pretty good. But it comes off too easily. So it looks like we've hit a problem. Let's see what we can do here. Let's tighten up a bit. It just comes off too easily. Although this is like a steering one, so it's not the end of the world. And I could probably replace it now that I think about it. Let's go back to our old method. I think it's a bit more reliable. It just requires a lot of physical force. A tiny bit more. Okay. This is wearing me out physically quite quickly, so... Almost. What's the time? 10:43. So we're up to an hour and 20 minutes. Or 28 minutes, so I might end up cutting the stream short and do this off stream so that we can come back later on today and finish this off. So that was a pretty pathetic attempt on my end just then, but let's go and see if that fixed it. Oh, yes. That's what we want. Could I do a bit more? No, I think that's almost perfect. Yeah, I'm going to say that's perfect. So now we can work on the other side. Oh, God, man. This just takes forever. And in fact, I'm going to back that piece off and start with a new piece because I want to fix this one up independently. And we'll put you there so I don't forget about you. This is where having spare parts really makes a difference. especially for anything that requires a lot of tweaking. It just gives you a lot more opportunities to make mistakes. Like I've built a couple of these kits and I still make pretty bad mistakes. And I don't know what I would do if I didn't have spares on hand. I can only imagine how infuriated people would be if they got to like the very end and made a mistake, or at the very beginning made a mistake and then had to order replacement parts. Once again, that's assuming they've even got the replacement parts on hand, which might not be the case. Okay, let's do a test fit so we know how loose that one is. And it's not. Shiny side up. Put it in the hole. Apply stupid amounts of force. These parts are actually quite resilient because I'm putting a non-significant amount of force on them and they're not breaking, which is good. It's enough to wear me out, but I get very, very tired very, very quickly these days. God, I don't know which side was which after I dropped it. Okay, and just to confirm. Okay, so it seems like it's very dependent on which ball you plug it into as well. Okay, it just means more tuning. In fact, I'm going... Oh, yeah, the health issues, they're related to the immune stuff. So if I get a cold, it means I've got very, very little energy left. And I haven't been exercising nearly as much as of late as well due to everything that's happening, so I've lost quite a bit of muscle mass. Oh, that's actually a bit of a way to do it. So it's not any new health issues, it's existing health issues. That and working full time just takes it out of me so much. I'm one of the few people that I know of at the clinic I go to for the transplant that still works full time. Everyone's either effectively retired or is only working like 1 or 2 days a week. So I'm doing pretty well in that regard. But it also means I could be pushing myself too hard. Actually, you know what? A ball bearing would be perfect here. You know why? So I can push the pin through. Yeah, it's a bit more reliable. Okay, cool. That looks good. Could do a bit. Yeah, in fact, I'll just do one more round with that. Yeah, but I mean, like the alternative is death, right? So, how do I do it? It's got to go the other way. Which is funny because like I talk about death rather lightly, and in quite a humorous fashion, and a lot of people can't deal with that. It's normally people who've not had to face it up front and in close quarters. Okay, that's good. I don't want to say people are humorless, but yeah, it's like lighten up a bit. Actually, I should be doing that. I just don't want to damage the electronics in the soldering iron, so that side's good. I'm going to call that side good. It's a bit stiffer, but I'm fine with that. if I put it on the inside where it moves less, that friction won't be an issue. Okay, so now onto the other arm. Oh yeah, like I've got a lot of death jokes. So I accidentally made the mistake once. I was in hospital once because I used to have to go in at least 2 weeks per year. And then just prior to transplant, it was like almost 6 weeks per year. And like someone passed away and I'd completely forgotten about that. Like it had happened overnight at like 2 a.m. in the morning. I woke up and then went back to sleep. So the physio comes around and the room had been like really silent all morning. And it was because people were mourning, of course. And I went to the physio, oh yeah, it's been dead silent in here this morning. And then like almost facepalm when I realized someone just across like 2 meters away from me had just died. Yeah, it happens. Yeah, and I'm known for dark humor. I'm known for very, very, very dark humor. But it's not uncommon for people with my condition to have that sort of dark humor. Honestly, it's the only way to get through a lot of the stuff that you have to deal with. It's been funny that like some people say, oh, like I can only imagine what you've had to go through, blah, 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 blah. I don't know if I could do that. And that like I have to point out to them, it's like you either do exactly what I do or you're dead. Like there is no middle ground. So like the only people my age are the people who've done everything correctly. They just don't seem to get that nearly as much. Although, to be honest, it's not hard. It's just doing it day in, day out. I've seen a lot of people get stressed and get tired of doing the same thing every day. And the moment you get tired about doing something, that's when it's the end for you. And spend enough time about... Because I go to the respiratory ward, or I used to go to the respiratory ward a lot. Respiratory issues are really, really common with retirees for a number of reasons. Like, funnily enough, you'll find in a respiratory ward a lot of people who don't have respiratory issues there, because it's very, very common for some families to just park their grandparents there. So they'll go into the emergency room and say they're sick. And then the doctors won't be able to find anything, so they have to bring them in to see if they can find anything. It turns out they're not sick. It's just the family's going on a holiday or something and doesn't want to take their grandparent with them. And so they're effectively using the hospital as a babysitting service for retirees, which for me is really, really annoying because it used to make it very, very difficult to get a bed. And sometimes it'd be like a 2-week waiting time when I was waiting for like antibiotics. And then there's a whole lot of smokers. So I'm not a big fan of smokers, mainly because not for even the health issues. Like I understand most people are going to are not able to get it off easily, but they have to realize that they used to be competing with me to get into the hospital, and I'm not a particularly big fan of something like that when it's preventable. But it worries me a lot less these days. So. Oh, that arm's getting there. Yeah, it's kind of crazy that a family would do that, but I haven't ever really noticed it. The nurses have pointed it out a couple of times. But the point I was going to originally is I've been around a lot of old people, and you can always tell when someone's getting on and is not far away from passing away. And there's that look in their eyes, and it's that detachment from reality that you can just pick it once you've seen it a couple of times. And you'll see it in like animals that are getting old and everything. Like they want to be there, but they just can't muster the effort to do it anymore. And once you get to that give up point, you're typically gone within a year or so. I had a grandparent pass away, and you could see it in her eyes. It wasn't pretty, but yeah, she kept on maintaining the appearance. She wanted to be there and do things, but if you actually went off and said, oh, hey, like, you want to go for a walk or something, she just really didn't want to do it. So, Oh, it's probably a bit of a grim thing to be talking about on a mini Z stream, but like as I said, I've got dark humor, so it doesn't really bother me. I've had to talk to a lot of people about this stuff and my condition over the years that you just kind of get over it. Like I can do a full medical history in, I think, half an hour or 45 minutes, which is exceptionally quick because my medical history has 34 chapters in it. And I'm not even kidding. Like I've actually seen the books I've got. They're all about like that folders that thick, and it goes for 34 volumes. So I can give an abbreviated history in about 45 minutes. But one of the things I do when I go into hospital is I take it as an opportunity to train new doctors. So they typically, before they get their license or whatever, have to have like an exam in front of a patient. And that's almost perfect. And they need patients for that. So I normally volunteer to be like a difficult patient or a really, really helpful patient, or omit one or two key details, because like I've done it so often now and I can do it without thinking that I make a great candidate for some of the more difficult tests. But more importantly, like hospital can get very, very boring. And so like I don't mind talking to doctors more just because whatchamacallit, because you've got nothing else to do. So yeah, one of the side effects of the medication I'm on is my attention can just go sometimes. Oh yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. And that's just the list the feds have, right? Like if you get your Facebook history or something like that, I can only imagine how detailed that is. But I know you've been hit with some pretty harsh stuff. Like I haven't ever dived into the details with you, but I've read up on some of the stuff, and I'd really hate to think about the restrictions you're under at the moment. Like yeah, I and you probably are already, but given the current situation over there and some of the riot stuff, I'd definitely be avoiding the police at all costs at the moment. But that's kind of the point, right? Like, if you criminalize everyone, then it makes it very easy to have leverage over them. I'm just interested to see what happens this election, because I don't think the results are going to be pretty, regardless of the result, regardless of the outcome. And I must admit, I'm actually getting kind of worried for the US. It's in a bit of a dark place at the moment. There is a lot of stuff happening that is kind of crazy, and it's very interesting to see like the emphasis on constitutional rights, but so many of them seem to be violated at the moment, and no one really seems to be doing much about it, which is a bit entertaining in some ways. And it's got a lot of sprue on it. Yeah, and like I'm not even seeing everything, so I actually don't watch the news that much. I'm only really seeing what's coming in on Twitter. So I get some pretty abbreviated accounts, but I've seen some I've seen some videos of some pretty horrendous stuff. Like there was one I was seeing, like police walking, about 30 police and a Humvee walking down the street, and these guys on their balcony just with a video camera, and a guy like calls out video camera, and all the police turn and start firing paintballs and stuff at him. That was crazy. Okay, so that's looking good. I just want to take some, there's a bit of extra sprue here, and I just want to try and remove that. There we go. So what, the election's in November, isn't it? Please at least tell me you've got some good candidates running. Because I think that could possibly be the worst thing, is if there's no decent candidate. Actually, you know what? I need a scalpel for this. If there's no good choices. Let's cut that sprue off. The quality of these parts is actually pretty shit. Like they looked good initially, but now that I'm having to clean them up, it's like I'm actually questioning them quite badly. Yeah, as I thought. I was I don't know how true it was, but I saw something on Twitter before I started the stream, because I just quickly posted to Twitter when I started about like the current like billionaires are making about $2 billion every 2 weeks, which is pretty insane. I guess this would be a great time to buy a boat. In fact, there's a nice guy down the road that's got a yacht, and he was an ex-engineer, and I've been talking to him more and more. We just keep on meeting at the supermarket by chance. Well, I hope it's chance, and I hope it's not like an operation against myself, but only joking there. Like, I don't think I'm really worth caring about, but do that. Oh, this is going to be difficult. I have to do this on the edge here. Oh, that's not going to work either. Ball bearing, perhaps. That might work. And pop out that ball bearing in the middle. I think a boat would just be generally nice, although the docking fees are pretty crazy. I'm actually looking to get a place in the near future. But I'm kind of torn about what size place I need. And actually, if I think about it, a boat is not a good option because there's too much swaying, and like drifting on that would be very, very difficult. Although it would be pretty interesting to watch that. Yeah, I'm actually more worried if the incumbent doesn't win, and what's going to happen in that case. Okay, that's pretty smooth. Yep. And let's check this side. Oh, that needs a bit of work. I think we're almost done here, so we're making pretty good time. And we're talking politics, which I probably should never talk about politics because my views are pretty naive. You know what? It's funny that I hear a lot of people saying, oh, everyone should be involved in politics and everything, but if everyone needs to be involved in politics, there's kind of an issue in that. It's like, I think everyone needs to be involved in computer security, but no one ever takes that advice seriously. And then you see people like, everyone needs to be involved in people's health and all that sort of stuff. It's like, I just don't have enough time in the day to care about all of that stuff. And politics is definitely not my strong suit. So the fact that I have to care about it, kind of irritating. Because at the end of the day, there isn't much of a net gain. It's basically an insurance policy against bad things happening. Over here, there's been some pretty bad corruption as well. So our Prime Minister is kind of a douchebag. It's like, oh, people should stay at home and shouldn't go outdoors to events and things like that. And then it's seen the next day at the football. It's just crazy. And he did the same thing during the fire. Like, he actually literally, like, the fire started and he went on holidays. And it was only because of the public outcry that he came back. Yeah. You know what? I'm realizing that about the... I don't want to call people dumb. But I was at the pharmacy. And on the way to the pharmacy, there were a bunch of people talking about COVID-19. And their views were a bit naive. But there was basically I don't think it was even the vaccine. I think it was like, oh, we don't need masks or everything. You just have a look around the local area and we're on top of it. And that sort of thing. And it really made me a bit concerned about some people in the local area. Because that's a big thing for me, the masks. And having a compromised immune system. Yeah, so... Oh, come on, don't be so fiddly. The problem with making this all smooth is it makes it really hard to work with as well. Okay. I want you there. Come on, clip on. Yep. that's good. And now we do this arm. Okay, and we twist like that. Bam. But yeah, my normal voting patterns, because over here it's a bit different to the US, everyone has to vote. And I really don't normally like any of the options. So I normally just vote the option that's going to complicate things the most for all the parties involved. Which is not a great voting strategy, but it's really the only one that works for me. So our local, we had local council elections probably a couple of years ago now. The person who won didn't actually have too many ideas, which is fine. Some of the other parties had ideas, and to be honest, the local council, I believe, has done a pretty good job. But the major thing she was pushing for was community flower beds. Now, I was actually against the idea at the time, basically because I didn't think it added any value. And I'll take that back. I think what they've done with the community flower beds and community growing areas has been pretty good. Yeah, chaotic neutral. Actually, that's probably the best way of describing me, as chaotic neutral. But yeah, the flower beds, there were a couple of areas where it actually provided some shade and made things a bit nicer. But it was kind of interesting that she won with only that policy. But it was also the least offensive policy, like the least interference, I should say. There we go. That is smooth as. And I think this is probably part of the problem I had with the DRZ, is I didn't pay enough attention to the details. Although there's a couple of... I did try and make these black things move as smoothly as possible. That's binding. Why is it binding? Is it binding on the arm? Might be. It's not the top arm, it's not the bottom arm, it has to be the bottom arm. Where was I with that? I can't even remember what I was talking about anymore. But I guess the council member having a least offensive policy and voting for that is probably the way to go. I like some of the Greens' policies, but the problem with the Greens here is that their policies don't extend beyond the environment. And that makes them a very, very hard choice to pick. Is that top arm bind? No, that top arm can't be binding. But apart from that, they're not too bad. I wish the Pirate Party was a bit more prominent, but I haven't heard much from them as of late. It's hard to find a political party you agree with on all points, and I think that's probably impossible now that I think about it. As I said, when it comes to politics, I'm probably a bit naive, so... Is the friction at the top, perhaps? So the arms are moving well. Oh yeah, there is some binding in one of these. Maybe it's that top one. Might be my end. It says it's pretty stable, but who knows? Like I've been finding Twitch has been a bit unreliable as of late. I've normally got to reload the web browser version of Twitch a couple of times before it shows. I find the command line utilities I use pretty stable compared to the web browser version. But my local ISP has congestion issues as well at the moment, so they became one of the biggest, one of the top 3 ISPs very, very quickly, and I don't think the network was really scoped to handle that, especially considering that they're a budget provider. It goes underneath there. Yep, okay. The interesting thing about them is I know they've got YouTube cache servers on their network, because I can see that with traceroute information and a whole lot of network diagnostics, and you can tell that one of their cache servers is heavily overloaded or has hardware issues. So some days, like I go to watch a video, and every like 30 seconds it just stops because it hits that one cache server. Probably need to blacklist it or something. It's a bit better. Now let's... Although I need to get back into network management. I've been redoing all my systems, and my router's a lot better now, but still needs a bit more work. Is it the bottom or the top? I think that's the top one. Let's see. Oh yeah, it's the top one. Tiny bit more work. This is all so fiddly. Worth it, but fiddly. Yeah, but that's kind of my point, right? So there's violations of the Constitution at the moment, but there's not a lot of noise about it. Do you need to learn network management? I thought you were pretty confident on the network management side of things. I mean, you're a part of a very exclusive club in terms of network management, which I'm not going to go into at the moment, but... Oh, VLANs escape everyone. Like, I know people consider them basic knowledge, but the amount of advanced people that can't even explain what a VLAN is, like, I actually use what is a VLAN as an advanced interviewing question. Maybe just the bottom one. Basically, a VLAN, at a high level, a VLAN allows you to split your, I don't know what to call it, divorce your physical network implementation from your logical implementation. So you have all these physical switches, you hook them all together, and then you use VLANs to bind them into smaller networks that are connected by routers. But the actual implementation details are scarily complex. Like, I've got VLANs on my local network and I still have not found a good way to manage them. I've thought about using the automatic configuration and registration stuff, but even that, I've got a simple network where that would work, and even that doesn't seem like an optimal solution. It's kind of why I like VXLAN and software-defined networking. I think that might be the solution, but even that requires normally a lot of overhead to implement. So that's still binding. Yeah, mainly when I'm off-center. What about this one? If this one's off-center, does it do the same thing? No. Okay, so there is an issue here. And I can feel it binding as I rotate, so that's fine. That's not. So I'm just going to twist and torque it manually. Oh, /23. Yeah, so I don't want to talk about work details too much. There isn't much proprietary information I'd talk about in this arena. But there is one thing, and I'm not going to talk too much about it because work will kill me if they ever found out. There is one thing that I did find interesting, and that's whether or not you use host level firewalls, or if you just enforce everything going via the router and just use router level firewalls. Yeah, on their own, both of these are absolutely fine. Let's talk them out that way. So host level firewalls mean that if you've got a whole lot of machines that are identical, you only have to configure it in one place. And that seems to work pretty well. The only problem is that inter-LAN communication doesn't go via a router and doesn't hit the firewall. So I guess it depends on your purpose. Like for client machines, probably want host level firewalling. For server grade stuff, it depends. If they're all the same machine type, then yes, you might be able to get away with it. Like, so say it's a web server fleet. But if it's, I need to widen that a bit more, I think. If it's different styles of machines, like a database and a web server and stuff, maybe you actually want to enforce them on different subnets and then force them to go via the router. We're getting there. It's still not totally smooth. Sit back, I'm competent. Yeah, that's the one thing about networking, right, is like the deeper you go, the more complex it gets. But you know what I've learned about IT, and this is really only a very, very new insight. IT tends to diverge rather than converge on solutions. And networking is one of those spaces that's sort of being reinvented at the moment and diverging on solutions. So it seems very, very wide, but you can focus on a subset, and that's totally fine. I think you'd be lost if you tried to focus on doing everything. In fact, there was a very, very good video where they talked about this, and it was about why there's so many different programming languages. Something dropped off. What was it? Why there's so many different programming languages, and how can the industry support such a large ecosystem? And it turns out because the costs are so low, it's very, very trivial to do so. But at the end of the day, it just means that there's a lot of options for no good reason. And it's why programming languages have their own islands. Oh, that's just tight the entire way around now. It's dropping a bit, but there's a lot of friction like that. That's interesting. What if I do that? That fixes it a bit. What if I torque the bottom? Still some issues. Drops very easily, except when I rotate it. Yeah, this actually feels asymmetrical. Yeah, I've actually wondered about that. You seem to be pulling off quite a bit for a one-man shop. Is there any possibility to hire a junior? And is that even going to work? I mean, if you're in the discovery phase and like working out new technologies, I don't know if you necessarily want a junior. I know most organizations would disagree with me on that front, but I'm kind of the opinion that you don't want, if you're trying to build something, if the company is small enough, you probably just do want the one person for it. Yeah. Probably need to find someone who's a network expert to give you some advice of where to look so you don't waste your time. As long as it's not a Cisco representative, you should be fine. Really don't like Cisco for a number of reasons, but they seem to have their own take on networking that's like different to the RFCs and different to like the rest of the world. And I don't necessarily, well, I've heard the CCNA test is a bit different now, but I didn't actually put a whole lot of faith in the CCNA test. But I guess that's just due to my networking skills on my end, and me thinking that because of that's sort of standard. Bad experiences with Cisco as well. I can't even say I've got bad experiences with Cisco. It's just that I've read some of their documentation, and and looked at some of their protocols and think they're just insane. Like, it's very much the only reason you need this is because you made mistakes like way, way, way earlier in the process, and they're just supporting it back. Where I've got a lot of complaints. That's just one of them. My complaints are not necessarily valid either. Ah, that's why that screw there. Okay, so there's a little screw at the bottom here. You might be able to see it. I was trying to work out what that is, and it actually pushes up against the control arm so that the wheel can't rotate anymore. That's a really nice touch to prevent the wheel from over-rotating. I hadn't even thought about that. So the arm's nice, it's dropping. That's good. Most of the friction is gone, so I'm going to call that done, actually. Just because I can't be bothered. Which is not a good way to tackle this problem, especially with chassis like this, but we'll see how it turns out. Awesome, so I'm almost going to call it done. Let's put that back in there. I should probably put the retaining clips back on. Yeah, but when they used to be decent, how far away are we talking about? Because I haven't seen them being decent for like at least 10 years. Definitely seems to be all about money these days. So I'm just putting the some plastic wheel nuts on just to try and retain these wheel thingies so they don't fall off. In fact, let's get rid of you. There we go. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking of Oracle at the moment. I don't like invoking that name often, but I I've seen a lot of proprietary solutions, and the justification for using them is that if there's an issue, we'll be able to get support, and it's a well-supported product. And I've not necessarily found that to be the case. I found the best estimate of, you look at a product, you look at how many consultants there are from a product, and if there are a lot of consultants for that product, walk the other direction. Because it's either hideously complex, or the bigger question is, you should be asking yourself, why is there a market big enough to support that many consultants? Why can't we do it in-house? And that seems to be a good litmus test. A lot of business people disagree with me on that front, but if you're trying to in-house everything, it's definitely a fairly good test. So let's see where we're at now. Let's work on that H bridge. We're going to move on now. Actually, what's the time? 11:20. I'm going to work all the way up to 12 because I want to go up to the cafe for lunch. Which may seem crazy during COVID, but I'm going to say it's not that bad here. I'm going to be wearing a mask up there, but then I realise I'm not going to be wearing a mask while I'm eating, so perhaps it's not the smartest move given everything that happens to me. 222, 222, and I want you. But at the end of the day, actually, this is probably the biggest thing, right? So back to my condition. Being afraid of germs and viruses is a very, very new thing to a lot of people. And I've been doing it my entire life. And so people see me taking risks that may seem crazy to them, but it's not necessarily about being alive for as long as you want to, as you can, but also getting enjoyment out of life. And I've had to pass up on a lot of opportunities just to stay alive, and I'm very sick and tired of doing that. So I am more than willing to take some risks for a bit of enjoyment, to get a bit more enjoyment back in my life. It's kind of crazy. I'm not going to go into the specific details, but I've had to give up a significant amount of my life just to get to this point, and I'm only now starting to live life how I want to. So people say that it's crazy, but like they don't realize that I've done this entire COVID thing for, like 30 plus years, and I've got things I want to get done. So at least the mini Z stuff is indoors, but I try. It's all about weighing the risks. So I protect myself in some ways, and I take risks in others, and just try and balance that risk as much as possible. So while there are COVID cases increasing in both New South Wales and Victoria, it's not super extreme. It is increasing, which is concerning, but it's at a level that I'm comfortable going to the cafe for. Yeah, it's risk mitigation, and I'm doing a different type of risk mitigation to everyone else, because I'm not trying to minimize risk. I'm trying to balance that off against quality of life. It's a hard one. I don't think there's actually a correct answer here. But I try and get the most out of my weekends. In fact, I'm very, very tempted to go take out the big RC car over lunch as well, so I might do that. I finally finished rebuilding it, and it's been sitting there for a couple of weeks now. It's all going to depend how many people are at the park at the moment. Okay, so we're on to gear diffs now. So we're really making some pretty good progress. And why is that binding? Oh, okay, it's just because that's full. That's all the way back. So if I pull that out. Oh, that's so smooth. Yeah, I'm a bit more concerned that there's a bit of a cultural element here. Does this have all the parts I need? Yes, it does. So Australia and I don't want to say New South Wales. Australia did well on the first round. We're on the second round, and everyone's kind of assuming because we did well on the first round, they don't need to implement protections. And I'm somewhat guilty of that myself. I've only started to ramp everything back up again, and very, very slowly at that. And done it very, very slowly. And I always knew the issue with Australia, and especially Sydney, wasn't going to be on the first round. I was pretty sure we'd have that under control. It was going to be when there was a second wave. And from what I'm seeing on the news, I was dead right with that. And that's just a cultural thing. Like, if we get it over it the first time, it's like we discount how bad it is. So I need those 2 plates. And I've seen a lot of evidence for that. So that's what I was looking for. So those 2 plates go like that. So I've pushed you in there, put you on top. Oh, actually, that's got retaining clips. Yeah, I don't have a lot of confidence in the average Australian. I've seen some pretty horrible things. I'm definitely not a fan of the pro-Australian movement that's happened locally a couple of times, especially when it comes to immigration. It's like, you're not great because you're Australian. It's because Australia is great because there are great Australians. Just by being a member of the group, just by being an Australian doesn't make you great. Like, there is a lot more beyond that. And a lot of people seem to be getting that confused and thinking that Australia is great rather than that there are great Australians making Australia great. But yeah, once again, now I'm ranting. So what I'll likely do is mute this section when I upload it to YouTube. Where there's been a lot of... calling it pro-Australian is probably not even the right term. There were some Cronulla riots where a whole lot of immigrants were bashed quite badly. M1.24s. And yeah, that didn't make us look good at all. But like the basis for... They're basically pro-Australian, and it's not pretty. Like, a lot of the people who are for it as well are not the most upstanding citizens either. And some people got beaten very, very, very viciously for what I would say no good reason. Well, I mean, there's never a good reason to do that, but yeah, I can't even remember why there was a riot. It's like, you're not necessarily losing your job because immigrants are taking it. It's like that entire industry was dying, for example, in 1 or 2 particular cases. Like, we used to have a car like, this is going to be a bit controversial. We had an entire car building industry here. It was never big. Like, doing car manufacture in Australia is kind of a dicey strategy to begin with. So the fact that, like, you could say that overseas people are taking the car manufacturing business, yeah, okay, on the surface it's true, but in the same breath it just was heavily subsidized by the government and just never really made business sense without massive kickbacks and offsets. So a lot of people were torn up when the car stuff was gone, and yes, it did affect people's livelihoods, but I don't know why they invested so heavily with it to begin with. Yeah, we've had a couple of very, very, very bad flare-ups, and a couple of very, very vocal politicians on the matter. There's definitely some issues around that, but it's very, very hard to come up with a solution for it. Like, there's been a lot of IP theft and that sort of thing, especially at the universities with foreign students. But, I mean, that's par for the course, right? The areas we were doing well in, however, were shut down by the government, which is kind of interesting. So we actually do a lot of research and development, and they cut the research and development funding by massive amounts. Which was weird because I didn't realize, but there's a bit of a monopoly on carbon fiber, and there's only a few factories in the world capable of producing it, from what I understand. And we came up with an alternate carbon fiber manufacturing process, which would have been a massive financial boon. So it just seems weird that you cut off the funding for that. But then again, our current Prime Minister is does what I consider to be very, very weird things. And seems to be trying to save money by shutting things down rather than actually grow the country. It'd be interesting to see if he gets re-elected. Wow, yeah, I'm actually really starting to fade very, very rapidly. So I'm going to finish building this this diff up, and we'll see what happens then. I think I need to get some food into me because I think my blood sugar level is probably a tiny bit too low, and I'm feeling a bit lightheaded because of it. And I'll know if that's the case because my hands will be shaking. And they are. I wouldn't say it's particularly bad, but that's normally a good sign I need to get something to eat. Yeah, I mean, it's actually coming up to, it's 11:30 at the moment, and I actually skipped breakfast because my blood sugar was a bit high, so that's probably, all the pieces are probably falling into place now. So I'll probably go for another 5 minutes or so and then finish up. Just enough to build this diff. And you have to be careful when building diffs. Normally very, very small screws that are easy to strip. Although I think I've got some spares of this diff if I need it. So, like, this looks like the same diff as the DRZ, so. Yeah, it comes on very, very quickly, and it's like the energy loss. Like, I think I can do something, and then I'll get like halfway into it, and then start to fade very, very quickly. And it's very hard to tell, oh God, how much energy you have. Okay. Did they just strip out? Oh my God. Oh, this is what I hate about these parts is, yeah, they've stripped out. So the screws are in there, but it's the holes on this side, like the screws have gone right through them and stripped it out. Not the plastic threading, the plastic retaining thing, so it's not all doom and gloom, but there's been some significant damage to it. I was very, very tempted to go with a solid diff, and I might just go off and do that. But either way, I think this is probably a good point to end, and go grab something to eat. So I don't know if I'll be back in the afternoon. I might be or I might not be. I do want to do the entire build, so possibly, but I also want to stream some Battletech this afternoon, so we'll see what happens. So thanks for joining us. Pop around this afternoon to see if something actually does happen or not, but you should get email notifications, and have a great day or night. Yeah, as I thought, you'll be sleeping in a couple hours, so see you later.